Great day, students. Mr. Sargent here with your Monday Science Recap video. Today's lesson, it's all about matter and the states of matter and how states of matter can change. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking a lot about the word matter, but do you know what matter is? Now, last week we briefly talked a little bit about matter and how it makes up everything. I'm matter. The chair I'm sitting on is matter. The air I'm breathing is matter. You watching this at home, you're matter. We are made up of matter. And if we're talking about the states of matter, let's just change the background here. We have three different states of matter. We have solid, liquid, and we have gas. Now, everything on Earth is made up of these three things. It's either a solid, it's either a liquid, or it's a gas. But what makes a solid, what makes a liquid, what makes a gas? Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, if you watched last week's video, we talked about how all parts of matter are made up of molecules. Some molecules are further away from each other, some are closer together. So let's just quickly review that. If something's a solid, then the molecules are really, really, really close together. They're so close together that you can't pass through it. Well, it's sort of like me trying to walk through a wall. What's going to happen? Well, chances are I'm going to smack into the wall, and no one wants to see that.
Go, 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 go,
Now,
go,
if we're talking about a liquid, the molecules are a little further away. Now, can we pass through liquid? Yes. But does some of it stick to us? Absolutely. That's what happens when you run your hands under a sink when you wash your hands. Your hands can pass through the liquid fine, but don't your hands get wet? It's because those molecules are sticking to you. All right? And with gas, well, we can walk through gas. We're walking through gas right now. I'm sitting through gas. I'm breathing gas. The molecules are so far apart that we can pass through them easily. So now that we know the states of matter, can states of matter change? I'm reminded of a song.
Started from the bottom on the ground. It evaporated and condensed into a cloud.
Remember that? Remember the water cycle song? Where the water cycle changes from liquid, it heats up, turns to gas, it cools down, it turns to a solid, then a liquid, and then it returns again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the water cycle is a great example of how matter can change. But what is the underlying issue of a reason why this matter changes? Well, it's heat. And as we learned last week with conduction, convection, radiation, we know heat can be transferred, and it can be transferred to different forms of matter. So if we're talking about a solid, how do we get a solid to change to a liquid or to a gas? Well, we add a lot of heat to it. This is called melting. All right? Think about some of the things that melt. Well, I know one of my favorite things that melt is popsicles. I love popsicles, but they melt. I wonder who invented the popsicle. Well, ladies and gentlemen, next we're going to read a book together about the invention of the popsicles called The Boy Who Invented the Popsicles. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and follow along.
Frank William Epperson knew what he wanted to be when he grew up. And everyone in Frank's family knew too, because, in case they forgot, he reminded them, often. When not busy with his schoolwork or chores, Frank could be found adventuring with his brother Craig, practicing his cornet, or learning magic tricks. He also pondered important questions. Do ants have ears? Do goldfish sleep? Do woodpeckers get headaches from pecking all day? But Frank's favorite pastime was inventing, and to invent, Frank knew he had to experiment. So off he would go to his laboratory, his back porch. There, he doodled and designed, tinkered and tested, analyzed and scrutinized. By the time Frank was 10 years old, he had already masterminded his first invention, a handcar with two handles. At twice the speed of a regular one-handled handcar, Frank whizzed down the streets of his neighborhood. Frank also experimented with liquids. But what Frank loved most was experimenting with flavored soda waters, the kind that hissed and wheezed when he held a glassful to his ear and sent tangy bubbles galloping across his tongue with every gulp. Frank had his heart set on inventing the yummiest, most thirst-quenching, lip-smacking soda water drink ever. So off Frank would go to the corner store to buy the flavored soda water powders he needed for his experiments, often with his little brother Cray tagging along. Cray was a handy taster for Frank's concoctions. Some of his attempts were unsuccessful. You could even say they were disastrous. But Frank just kept on trying. One day, Frank and the other children in his neighborhood decided to build a miniature amusement park. There was a theater, a merry-go-round, and a scenic railway. Frank was assigned the soda water stand, which suited him just fine. He could share his soda water creations with all his friends. It was also around this time that something peculiar happened. The temperature dipped, then plunged. This would not have been unusual had Frank lived in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, or Pocatello, Idaho, where it could be bitterly cold in winter. But he lived in San Francisco, California, where only rarely did the temperature drop below freezing. So Frank tried another experiment. He left a glass of flavored soda water outside overnight. When he woke the next morning, Frank ran to his back porch to discover his soda water had frozen solid. He could no longer sip it. He had to lick it, like a lollipop. Frank had invented a frozen drink on a stick. As he grew older, Frank's invention did not melt from his memory. He just tucked it away in a corner of his mind. And there it stayed while he and his sweetheart, Mary Frances, began raising their gaggle of children. But when Frank noticed more and more people eating chocolate-covered ice cream bars, off he went to his laboratory, now his garage, to experiment. Frank found a way to make many of his drinks on a stick at the same time, with test tubes to mold them, wooden sticks to hold them, and a cool way to freeze them. For Frank's drinks on a stick to freeze, they had to be cold, very cold, colder than 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the freezing point of water. Why? Because their ingredients, like sugar and flavoring, lowered their freezing point. So what did Frank do? He built a freezing box that held dozens of test tubes suspended in a mixture of crushed ice and salt. Frank knew that salt lowered the freezing point of water, and that salty water froze at a much lower temperature than plain tap water. The salt and ice mixture would be colder than 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Frank's drinks on a stick also had to freeze quickly. If they froze too slowly, the sugar and flavoring, which were heavier than water, settled at the bottom of the test tubes, leaving just flavorless frozen water at the top. Frank wanted his treats to have the same tasty flavor throughout. The salt and crushed ice mixture surrounding the test tubes was so cold it froze the liquid inside the tubes in minutes. Frank named his invention the Popsicle and began selling it for a nickel at county fairs and beaches. In the evenings, his children helped him roll the nickels he had earned. Frank had a clever way to encourage shop owners to sell his frozen treats. For several weeks in a row, he sent one of his children into a store to buy an Popsicle. Each week, the shop owner had to tell a different child that Popsicles were not sold in the store. Frank would then visit the store himself and ask the shop owner to stock his treats. Of course the owner agreed, after having had so many requests. Frank's children were always keen to sample their father's confections. And with all of them clamoring for their pop's tasty fabrications, in time, the name of Frank's invention changed to the Popsicle.
What a great book. Sometimes in science, it's great just to read a fun book once in a while. But if you look at the story, did he change the states of matter? Yes, he did. He changed the soda water from a liquid to a solid. How did he do that, though? He didn't melt it, did he? Because melting would be the opposite of that. He froze it, okay? So he took the soda water, he got it really, 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 really cold, and it turned into a popsicle. So it's got me thinking a little bit about how matter changes. We know that from something to go to a solid to a liquid, it has to melt. Now, I'm always thinking about molecules too. What happens to those molecules, let's say, when they're cold? Well, when they're solid, they're really close together, aren't they? So when we add heat to it, the molecules get further and further apart, thus going into a liquid. But what if I kept adding heat? Well, eventually that liquid's going to turn to a what? You're right, a gas. Because the molecules are going to be so far apart and there's so much heat energy added to those molecules that eventually it will turn to gas. Now, in reverse, if it's a gas and it gets really, really cold, it's going to condense or condensation and turn into a liquid. Now, if we keep taking that heat energy out of it by freezing it, eventually those molecules are going to combine and get so close that they turn it into you get it, a solid. So, ladies and gentlemen, how states of matter change based on heat energy. This is pretty much what we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks. So, by either adding heat energy or taking it away, matter can change. And to end class, your homework tonight is a reading comprehension on solids, liquids, and gases. You can see it right here, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be looking for this on Wednesday or Friday at the latest. So good luck. I know you're going to do your best. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today, and I cannot wait to see each and every one of you tomorrow.